Welcome, everyone. Welcome to part two of our Mecklenburg Declaration investigation. Today's podcast will reveal how the news traveled throughout the colonies after the battles of Lexington and Concord on April 19th, 1775. We will also reveal our understanding and our beliefs and our opinions of when the citizens of Mecklenburg County in North Carolina received the news about the battles and how they got the news. Also, at the end of this video, we will share an interesting discovery that we found about 3 weeks ago. If you are interested in the Mecklenburg Declaration, we urge you to stay to the end of today's broadcast for this exciting clue. To learn more about us, you can find our website at PiedmontTrails.com. If you have questions about today's broadcast, we encourage you to leave your comments at the bottom of the video after it's posted, or you can email us at contact@PiedmontTrails.com. So, now let's get started with episode number 50, entitled Hearing the News, Battles of Lexington and Concord. Okay, everyone, the battles of Lexington and Concord were the result of Thomas Gage's decision to confiscate all guns and gunpowder that were stored in Concord, Massachusetts. And the local militia, including various men from other communities, was preparing for battle with the British soldiers stationed in Boston. Leaders of this patriot group were not about to relinquish hundreds of barrels filled with gunpowder, nor were they willing to give up hundreds of muskets to the British soldiers. Although many musket balls were confiscated and several cannons were also destroyed, the Patriots were able to keep the bulk of their inventory intact after the battles. The statistical numbers from the battles vary slightly, but the approximate number killed was 50 colonists and over 70 British soldiers. Wounded numbers are over 40 for the colonists and nearly 30 for the British. Who fired the first shot? Our research leads to the documentation from Captain John Parker and his militia company known as the Lexington Minutemen. Numbering according to the roster, he had over 150 men under his command. Of these, approximately 80 answered to the drum call that was given by William Diamond on that morning of April 19th, 1775. Parker states that he strictly instructed his men not to fire unless fired upon. He further states that while his men's backs were turned, the first shot came from the British force directly in front of him. The shot, later known as the shot heard round the world, unleashed the fire that was already stirring throughout the colonies. It was the spark that united active patriot groups in every single colony. These groups varied in size from less than 10 to literally hundreds per group. Our history textbooks refer to various groups known as safety committees or militia committees or intelligence committees. Much is known about the first two, but information is sparse when it pertains to the intelligence committees, and there's a good reason why. These men and women, that's right, men and women were involved in retrieving information, and they passed it to others in a very secretive manner. They grew more organized and developed codes, signs, and much more. The Culper spy ring was not the first to operate during the American Revolutionary War. We feel that the actual war began long before April 19th of 1775, and the existence of these committees proves that spying intelligence was not only put into use, but was improved upon and completely organized before the battles of Lexington and Concord. Before we move on further, I want to encourage all of you to research the exact details about these two battles and learn more about the men who participated in it. Captain John Parker was a farmer, and he was a father to 7 children. He was sick with tuberculosis at the time and was 46 years old on April 19th. He would not live to see his 47th birthday, and he died in his home on Spring Street in Lexington, Massachusetts, on September 17th, less than 5 months after the battle. Most of the colonists were local farmers who witnessed friends killed by the hands of their government, which vowed to protect them. None of these men were ever the same after that day, and we can add here that none of the colonies were ever the same after April 19th. The battles of Lexington and Concord changed everything in America. The intelligence committees, along with the safety committees and the militia committees, grew tremendously in the New England area after March 1770. Of course, this date corresponds with the Boston Massacre. Over time, the groups grew into the middle colonies and eventually southward by 1771. The 1771 date connects with the Battle of Alamance in North Carolina. Paul Revere was a member of the Boston Committee of Correspondence, which was created by Samuel Adams in 1772. At first, the committee informed colonists of their rights under British rule, but the group quickly became involved with local protests and boycotts. The members also gathered intelligence and began planning to take action to retain their rights if needed. Other groups, like the Boston Committee of Correspondence, began to emerge in other colonies. Each of these groups created a communication route with all of the other groups. And by 1774, there were intelligence committees in all of the 13 colonies. So, how did these groups communicate with one another? Some members became express riders, known also as couriers or post riders. Paul Revere was an express rider, as was Israel Bissell, Samuel Prescott, and William Dowse. These men are among the more famous express riders who would later become legends. Lesser-known express riders were John McBride, James Blair, Joseph Armstrong, William Hunt, P. Hall, James Jack, Thomas Hines, and Henry Howe. All of these express riders were noted in North Carolina. Many other express riders were located all throughout the colonies during this time, and we want to take a moment to honor each of them today and for their actions that they portrayed in the American Revolutionary War. It was crucial for these committees to interact with each other during this time because Lord Dartmouth ordered the London Post Office to intercept any letters from the colonies beginning in June of 1775. This interception consisted of opening and copying verbatim all contents of correspondence before delivering to the intended recipient. We believe this action affected the colonies in many different ways, creating economic issues with trading and shipping of goods from and to the colonies. It was this very reason why courier riders were created, and by them carrying the latest news or important details from a specific area, the colonies were able to stay in communication with fellow patriots and act in unison with one another when needed. Before we get into the express riders and the news they carried after April 19, 1775, we want to share a specific event that occurred in Virginia on the following day after the battles of Lexington and Concord. The date is April 20th, 1775. This is when Royal Governor of Virginia, who was John Murray, the 4th Earl of Dunmore, decided to seize the colony's gunpowder supplies from the public warehouse and load them on a British ship docked on the James River. This took place in darkness while the colonists were asleep and unaware of what was going on. A total of 15 barrels of gunpowder were loaded on the HMS Magdalen. The next morning, the colonists demanded to know where the gunpowder was located and why was it removed during the night. The governor made up some crazy story about being fearful of slaves or indentured servants escaping and gaining access to guns and the gunpowder. Eventually, Governor Murray allowed a bill exchange for 330 pounds for the missing gunpowder. What is ironic about this event is the timing and the amount of gunpowder taken. We are not sure if all 15 barrels were full, but this is still a large amount to be seized. By November 7th of the same year, Governor Murray declared Virginia in an official state of rebellion and declared martial law. Another key event that we don't want to overlook took place on March 23, 1775, about 1 month before the battles of Lexington and Concord, and this event also took place in Virginia at St. John's Church in Richmond. Patrick Henry spoke about colonist rights and liberty, and this is his famous speech with the line of "Give me liberty or give me death" occurred. According to our investigation, Virginia learned about the battles of Lexington and Concord on April 24th, just 5 days after the battles. We have not been able to positively identify the express rider who delivered the news in Williamsburg, but we believe the same express rider traveled from Baltimore, Maryland, and departed from there on April 22nd. The Virginia Gazette reported that an express rider arrived at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and they published this account on April 28th. They went further and stated that several express riders arrived in Virginia at different locations between the dates of April 24th and April 27th. Express riders were delivering packets of information to certain individuals. Most of these documents contained a copied letter and various newspaper clippings. The letter would be short and to the point and signed by a person who was known to the recipient at the delivery location. We have discovered express riders arriving in the same location in other areas, such as Charleston, South Carolina, and Cross Creek, North Carolina, which would be present-day Fayetteville. We don't feel this was an error on the committee's side. Instead, we feel this was intentional to ensure the news was received at that destination. Each rider had to be very familiar with the roads and the region where they were traveling. If they raised suspicions with the wrong people, their mission could be labeled as a failure. We have discovered that the majority of these riders traveled the best possible routes, and they often traveled at night when the weather was clear and the moon was bright. They were meant to travel fast and would exchange horses at specific locations if needed for longer trips. We want to reiterate that several riders rode through the countryside spreading the news of the battles, and some of these individuals were not associated with any intelligence committee or other organizations. They were simply traveling from one community to another, spreading news to make sure that everyone was aware of what was going on. The news arrived in South Carolina on May 9th by an express rider departing from North Carolina carrying several letters, various newspapers, and a verbal message known as the Lexington Alarm. Isaac Marion, brother of Francis Marion, known as the Swamp Fox, received a packet on May 8th from Robert Howe in Wilmington, North Carolina. Isaac forwarded the packet with a letter dated May 9th, addressed to several men residing in Georgetown and Charleston, South Carolina. And the letter states, and I will quote this letter: "Gentlemen of the committee, I have just now received an express from the Committee of the Northern Provinces desiring I would forward the enclosed packet to the Southern committees. As yours is the nearest, I request, for the good of your country and the welfare of our lives, liberties, and fortunes, you'll not lose a moment's time, but dispatch the same to the Committee of Georgetown to be forwarded to Charlestown. In meantime, gentlemen, your obliged humble servant, Isaac Marion." Unquote. South Carolina hears the news by way of a ship as well. The ship named Industry sailed from Salem on April 25th. Its destination was Charleston, South Carolina. The Industry sailed into port on May 9th with a copy of the Essex Gazette and the personal notes from Captain Edward Allen and other news from Boston and the battles of Lexington and Concord. The South Carolina Gazette and the County Journal both published news of these battles and news of the arrival of Captain Allen on the same day. Ironically, South Carolina's Provincial Congress formed a secret committee on April the 20th, 1 day after the battles of Lexington and Concord. This new committee was instructed to seize guns and gunpowder from 3 British-controlled armories. On the night of April 21st, the group of men set out to complete their assignment, and they were successful. This secret committee was also responsible for seizing 17,000 pounds of gunpowder from a vessel docked at St. Augustine, Florida on May 28, 1775. The question remains, how and when did Mecklenburg County receive the news about the battles? Many speculations and opinions have been shared over the years on this very pivotal moment. Our investigation initially researched the common narrative as supported by historian Archibald Henderson from the University of North Carolina and various other authors, and with their books dating from the mid-19th century to present day. The common narrative suggests the Moravians, who organized the Moravian settlements beginning in 1753 in North Carolina, were among the first to hear the news from Brother Richter on May 17th. Now, Brother Richter was named John Richter, and he was returning from Pennsylvania, and he brought several letters, documents, and news about the battles. He traveled to North Carolina and settled on the Wachovia Tract, which was known as the Moravian Settlements, in 1755. He was a known tailor by profession, and he conducted various other duties while in Bethabara until he died in 1780. One of his jobs was to take care of the cattle, which included purchasing additional cows when needed. Richter also traveled back and forth from Bethabara to Cross Creek to purchase salt and other items. Richter was a single man, and he would often travel to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and pick up correspondence and packages to deliver back to Bethabara or Salem or to Bethania. Richter was not an express rider, nor did he carry documents or letters about the Lexington Alarm. He was merely returning from a normal trip and brought news about the battles to his Moravian leaders and friends. Historians have proclaimed that the citizens of Mecklenburg County heard the news on May 19th and offered their opinion, stating that Bethabara was only a 2-day ride from present-day Charlotte. We find this data not correct. Our opinion is this is not what happened. And for several reasons. It doesn't make sense to us to think that the news arrived from Bethabara and Salem to Charlotte and Salisbury, simply because we know about the relationships between the local citizens in the Piedmont area and the Moravians at that time. It was cordial at best during this period, and it continued to worsen as the American Revolution approached closer and closer. The Moravians did not participate with local militia companies due to their religious beliefs. We find it ironic to locate a diary entry for Bethabara dated May 20th, 1775, the same date as the Mecklenburg Declaration, and the entry states, and I will quote this, "In the prayer meeting, the brethren and sisters were asked to remember the land in their petitions and its present critical condition, yet they should beware of a partisan spirit and remain faithful subjects to those in authority." It's very interesting to find out about this special prayer meeting. So it occurred on May 20th in Bethabara. So what time did this prayer meeting occur? This is apparently a very special prayer meeting requested by the leaders in that community, and often these were held at midnight. And if you go back to the correspondence in the investigation that the state of North Carolina conducted back in the 1830s, you will find most of the sworn testimonies of the people who were still living, who were alive on May 20th, 1775, were quoted as stating that Thomas Polk read the Mecklenburg Declaration from the steps of the Mecklenburg County Courthouse at noon on May 20th. I wanted to also point out another interesting entry from another diary located from Bethania states that on May 16th, Christian Conrad arrived from Pennsylvania carrying packages and letters which will be delivered the next day to Bethabara. That would have made it May 17th. the same date that many historians proclaim that John Richter arrived from Pennsylvania and arrived back into Pathabra. I found that very, very interesting. There's a lot of conflicting information there. So we believe that an actual express rider notified the Piedmont colonies and the committee county leaders in Rowan, Tryon, Surrey, and Mecklenburg counties, and that they were each sent packets filled with the Lexington Alarm. And since the royal governor of North Carolina, who was Josiah Martin, dismantled the North Carolina Assembly on April 8, 1775, just 1 month before the battles. The last meetings were held in New Bern from, less than a month. The last meetings were held in New Bern from April 4th to April 8th. And on April 24th, the governor's palace in North Carolina was attacked, forcing Governor Martin to take refuge at Fort Johnston. And on July 20th, a group of men destroyed the fort, and Martin retreated to the ship Cruiser on the Cape Fear River. The citizens of Mecklenburg County were seeking law and order for their families and their properties. This is the reason why a large gathering of people were sworn in as testimony that they visualized at the courthouse for that meeting scheduled for May 19th. There wouldn't have been a large amount of people gathered at the courthouse if it wasn't a well-known meeting, if they did not inform the public that they were meeting at the courthouse and what decisions that were going to be discussed. I think the public was fully aware of what was going to be happening at the courthouse. I think they held input on it. There were officers elected for a special new government to be assigned. And I think that the Mecklenburg County citizens found out at least a week, or if not longer, before the May 19th meeting was planned. So the men who attended the meeting already knew what their main objectives were prior to arriving. They were fully aware of their immediate situation. Ironically, the last executive council met on board the ship Cruiser on July 18, 1775. Those who were present were the Governor Martin, James Hassell, Louis de Rosette, and John Sampson. The council noted that the people of this province, speaking of North Carolina, will see their erroneous ways and will return to their king. Well, that's telling me that in their executive council notes that the people of North Carolina have already dissolved their relationship with King George at this time. And Governor Martin, he continues to stay. He stays on this ship along the banks of North Carolina. He directs a lot of loyalist movements during this time. He also encourages slaves to be free in North Carolina, and he arms them with weapons and encourages them to join their side. So he is still commanding from his temporary post on this ship, but it's very obvious that he has very little control. And that was on July 18th. So regarding the May 19th meeting, John McNitt Alexander was quoted as saying, "By a solemn and awful vote, we dissolved our allegiance to King George and the British nation." We will end our podcast here, and we'll continue with part 3 entitled May 19th, 1775, The Meeting. And that will be arriving close to the new year of 2026. Before you all leave, please allow us to reveal something very interesting that we found several weeks ago. We were stumbling through documents about the finances that contributed to the American Revolutionary War. You know, the Treaty of Alliance was signed with France in 1778, but would it surprise you to learn that negotiations with France began in the spring of 1775? Now, you won't find this information within the Continental Congress paperwork, and you won't find it there. Keep in mind, there are always separate committees, separate groups who are working on the sidelines during this time. So who was representing the colonists with these special correspondence. And why were they doing this when the Continental Congress was offering the olive branch petition to King George at this time? And our last hint is this. I'm going to leave you with this, guys. Could it be that the Mecklenburg Declaration was used to encourage support and financial aid from France? And are there any surviving documents that prove it? Stay tuned, you guys. Stay tuned for this, and we'll have this and much, much more with our investigation with the Mecklenburg Declaration. Until next time, enjoy your journey to the past, and may God bless.